Hello, thanks for watching. We are looking down at the Eastern Pacific. You can see way over here on the right of the screen, there's California, Nevada, the western half of the United States, maybe the western third. It's immediately apparent. Spinning out in the Pacific off the coast of Washington, Oregon, we have this very strong low pressure system bringing a lot of rainfall clouds into the area. It looks impressive because it is. It's also connected, maybe more relevance to California, this atmospheric river. We talked about these kind of coming into the El Nino year. We have talked about them last year, bringing a lot of rain to the state, snow to the Sierra Nevadas, other parts of the West. We have one here today on Wednesday. If you look closely, I'll try to kind of draw this out here. Here is the low pressure system spinning off the coast of Washington and Oregon. But if you look further to the south, really kind of make out in these clouds, there's that atmospheric river, that elevated atmospheric moisture bringing the clouds, bringing the rainfall at high enough elevations. You get the snowfall out of that as well. That's relevant, right, for California in terms of the water situation. We've seen flooding this year, Santa Barbara, San Diego, other areas at times. We're getting more water here today. Heavy rain now falling across parts of the Sacramento Valley. Heavy rain moving into the San Francisco Bay Area, across Northern California, which has been pretty wet here at the beginning part of this year. And even some light rain now getting into parts of Oregon and Washington as well, kind of hiding under these clouds here. Let's take a closer look at that here. This is kind of a zoomed in, same visible satellite product. We're looking closer at California. See these very thick clouds associated with rainfall underneath them, pushing right over the Bay Area. You can see that highlighted right here, pushing into the Sacramento Valley area. At least right now, sunny. Some high clouds probably in Los Angeles here, sunny in San Diego through Southern California. That is going to change here over the next 24 hours in a big way. We'll talk about that in just a second here. Wanted to shift up north. There's that zoom in look, the eye of the storm, if you will, that very strong, we call these low pressure systems, extratropical cyclones, either way bringing inclement weather to the west coast. There's more cloud shields here over Oregon and Washington as well. Get a different perspective here. Here's the national radar map. Fairly quiet across the contiguous U.S. unless you look over, to the west coast of the United States. We have rainfall, heavy rainfall at times here, moving into the Bay Area. Sacramento Valley looking at heavy rainfall as well in this radar image here, valid as of Wednesday afternoon, with some speckled and isolated rain showers now moving through parts of eastern Washington, the state line on Oregon there, the Yakima area, and then some even getting into the Willamette Valley there in Oregon. I will say this event kind of as a whole, it's going to be more focused on California. The storm we just looked at, that low pressure system, let's call that storm number one. And I say that kind of gives you a hint of where we're going. There's going to be another storm to talk about as we get a little bit toward the weekend here. Right now, just kind of spoil the fun. The second storm looking a little bit stronger right now in some of the forecasts than the one we're dealing with here on Wednesday, kind of going into Thursday. We'll talk about all that in just a second here to kind of wrap up the current situation, if you will. These are the all hazards from the National Weather Service valid as of right here on Wednesday afternoon at the recording of this video. The dark green colors that you can see here across the Sacramento Valley, parts of the North Coast. This is flash flood watch because of the excess rain expected to move into this area that's really already falling here right now. High wind warnings for coastal California and some of the mountainous regions along the central coastline. Some of the areas that are covered in this flash flood watch and some of these winter storm warnings, and even farther south in along California, do have some sort of active wind advisory, not showing up here because of their relative priority in terms of threat to life and safety here. The pink that we can see in the Sierra Nevadas, as you might have guessed, is the winter storm warnings that have been posted for the Sierra Nevadas. I would expect these to linger all the way through the weekend, with this first storm now pushing snow up into the area. More snow expected through the southern Sierras here overnight into tomorrow, potentially all the way through the transverse ranges here getting into tomorrow as well. And then that second storm, again, coming later into the weekend, or at least very early next week, likely to bring more substantial snowfall to the Sierra Nevadas. What is the driver of all this? Well, as often the case, we watch the jet stream, we look for these atmospheric rivers. We're looking down. This is a satellite-derived product of total atmospheric moisture, we call total precipitable water in the atmosphere. And a lot of that moisture tends to be down by the equator, where you have the moist tropics, where the temperatures are warm, the atmosphere is warmer, holds more moisture. But these strong Pacific jet extensions that we've talked about in an El Nino winter, like we're in the one now, can pull up some of that subtropical moisture toward California. And that strong low pressure system spinning here off the coast of Washington and Oregon, the jet stream further south of that, you can see that moisture connection. You can draw it right from Hawaii. You can drive right from Hilo over to the San Francisco Bay Area. There's your moisture connection. There's your Pineapple Express, your atmospheric river, whatever you want to call it. That's going to bring the heavy rainfall and the heavy snowfall to California. We're seeing it now. We just walked through that moisture connection there and what it can do for the weather in January and February along the West Coast. Another way we can visualize this is by looking at the forecast of water vapor transport. We'll take a look at the ECMWF, the European model forecast. It kind of outlines where we're seeing that atmospheric river pushing onshore here. I'll make this valid here as of Wednesday evening. And we can see similar to what we looked at with the cloud field, right? And then the radar that we looked at the Sacramento Valley, that heavy rainfall, is where a lot of that water vapor and that total precipitable water is being pushed onshore here in parts of California, even up through parts of Oregon. We saw those isolated showers in eastern Washington connected to where that moisture is in the atmosphere and where it's coming onshore and getting blown up some of these mountains. You get orographic lifting, so you get some of the flash flood warnings along the coastal areas of the mountains, and then winter storm warnings, right, high up enough where the temperatures drop to where you can get snowfall coming out of these. I'm going to take this forecast now overnight into Thursday morning, and you'll notice that atmospheric river, the trajectory is shifting south, first along the south central coastline through the Los Angeles area, just to a different forecast there. And then now looking at Thursday, tomorrow proper, getting through the day, you're looking at a much stronger focus. Let me jump right back to that. If we look at Thursday through the day here, getting into the afternoon on Thursday, stronger focus on San Diego, parts of the southern Los Angeles area, with more rainfall coming for areas down there. We saw the winter storm warnings for some of the transverse ranges as a result of that. That's really one of the products we look at. I'm going to kind of cheat here. I'm going to jump forward in this forecast here to get you a flavor of what we're going to be looking at this week. I mean, you get a little bit of a break in the precipitation, some of the snowfall, some of the wind here after the system moves out of here on Thursday going into Friday. Relatively uneventful weekend, but there's our next strong low pressure system coming in with a connected associated atmospheric river. We can see that in the water vapor transport here. Now coming up into parts of the Bay Area. This we're talking Sunday morning into Sunday evening and then into early Monday. That's kind of the time frame we're watching right now. It has shifted a little bit earlier, now shifted back a little bit later at times. The exact details of the timing, they're not going to be totally clear until we get closer to the weekend. It's still kind of a 5-day forecast right now. We get a little bit more confident right as that gets to maybe 4 days or maybe 3 days. But what we are confident about is that this is likely to be a significant precipitation maker, both in the form of rainfall and snowfall as we go through the day on Sunday and into Monday. Heavy rainfall totals along coastal areas, flooding will absolutely be a concern. Is it going to be a catastrophic flooding risk right now? Not necessarily. We're not, seeing that jump off the screen, but there will likely be some flooding risks. Certainly, urban flooding for parts of the Bay Area, stream, river flooding possible in some areas. Again, if we don't have all exact details when you're talking about a 5-day forecast, but this is one of the recipes to get flooding along California. You have a strong, potent atmospheric river. You have a potent low pressure system sitting just offshore. You have a strong upper level jet stream kind of pushing into the area. These are all connected with it, all helping to produce more rainfall, more snowfall for California. As I go through the day on Monday here, you can see the shifting more toward the south over parts of Southern California. So likely talking more Sunday in terms of maybe Central California, parts of the Sacramento Valley, parts of the San Joaquin Valley, parts of the Central Coastline, and then shifting more toward Monday as we go through, as that atmospheric river shifts further toward the south, similar to what we're seeing here Wednesday into Thursday of this week here. This is looking at the WPC, the National Weather Service forecast for precipitation amounts, not factoring in snowfall, just raw precipitation amounts over the next 48 hours. So it's not including that second storm that we just talked about. I said I was kind of skipping ahead a little bit on the slide before. Important things here, looking at a lot of rainfall just from this immediate event that we're seeing here Wednesday evening, right, going into Thursday. So potentially 2-3 inches plus, likely locally areas along the coast, particularly mountainous regions, looking at a little bit more than that. There are some flooding risks associated with that. We saw the flash flood watches valid for large portions of central and northern California as a result. Often, as is the case with some of the highest rainfall values, likely in Mount Shasta area, there were releases there into the river to prepare for that, so they are ready for some of the rainfall there. The river levels were going up as a result of that, just kind of even before the rainfall had started. Looking at rainfall through the Sacramento Valley, an inch plus, likely that some of the municipalities in there are going to get more than an inch of rainfall just over the next 48 hours from this immediate system, and that includes the rain that has already started falling here on Wednesday. Again, pushing more through Southern California tomorrow, San Diego, Los Angeles area. San Diego's seen plenty of rain already this year. We talked about the flood, right, in the last video. Looking at more rainfall there where soils are pretty saturated. That increases that kind of antecedent flood risk already. You're like raising the bar in terms of that moisture, and that just allows the flooding to happen that much sooner the next time around, when these systems come through. So it'll be something we have to watch over the next 48 hours, I think, for San Diego, and unfortunately out into early next week as well with storm number 2. Want to quickly mention wind. That's going to be a problem with some of these stronger low pressure systems. Again, this is looking out just really overnight tonight. I think the winds are going to pick up a little bit after that the rain has come through in the Sacramento Valley, but looking at forecast wind gusts using the 3-kilometer NAM forecast just because of that higher 3-kilometer resolution. So be able to pick up some of these wind gusts a little bit better. The main story here is that tonight winds are going to pick up across the Sacramento Valley. This forecast calling for 50 mile an hour plus gusts. That's when we kind of start to set the threshold for actually starting to cause a little bit of damage when you get up into that range. So keep an eye on this. Wind advisories and some high wind warnings are out as a result of this. As is often the case with these systems, stronger winds along the coastline and some of these elevated areas in the mountainous regions along the coast where high wind warnings are active as well. Lesser so, you get through the San Joaquin Valley, not expecting as strong of winds. Bay Area, can't rule out 30, 40, maybe a 50 mile an hour gust. But again, more along some of the immediate coastlines here in California. This is really just through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Looking at another wind threat with that system coming through Sunday night and then potentially all the way through Monday through Southern California. The wind threat with that second system potentially looks a little bit stronger than this one, at least kind of looking out into the 5-day forecast at this point. Wanted to quickly touch on temperatures here because I'm not going to talk about them too much with all the rain, snow, and wind threat. We've been very warm, breaking some records across California and other areas across the West kind of since this weekend here. That's changing right now. Part of that, we have clouds. You looked at the radar. We have rainfall falling in a lot of these areas. That just naturally kind of brings temperatures down. Not looking at terribly too cold of temperatures as we go through Thursday and then the Friday. We are in that kind of blue, lower than average color here, but we're not talking, hard freezes. We're not talking frost warnings right now as we go through the weekend. Some of this area getting more rainfall, more clouds than usual. That's just bringing temperatures down a bit. This showing you the National Weather Service maximum high temperature forecast now for Sunday, February 4th, out into Monday, February 5th. And then finally, February 6th on Tuesday. Again, not terribly cold, but taking a break from the warm temperatures we've had to start this week here across the West region. I want to take out and look at the simulated precipitation. This is the forecast from the ECMWF model, the European model. Just because of the nature and the magnitude, I think, of these two systems, we'll take a look at a few different opinions here because there is some difference of opinion when you get into the models going into Sunday and then into Monday. This forecast valid here right as of Wednesday afternoon and evening, kind of where I'm recording this video. There's that rainfall moving through parts of the Sacramento Valley, some of that heavy rain that we just looked at getting into the Bay Area, some of that rain trying to get into the Willamette Valley, some of those showers in Washington, pretty consistent here from the ECMWF. Through the night tonight, looking closer to a little bit closer to midnight now, strong heavy rain coming through the central coast of California, the Bay Area continuing to see rainfall. Is this sometimes the case with some of these atmospheric rivers and the frontal rain bands that set up any areas that kind of get sat underneath or trained on, as we call it, kind of like a locomotive. The storms just come up through your area south to north over and over again. Those are the areas that we're going to be most concerned about in flooding. Those are always kind of hard to forecast ahead of times, but areas along the central coast, the Bay Area, parts of Northern California, even parts of the Sacramento Valley will have to watch out for that. That is why those flash flood warnings, or flash flood watches, I should say, are active at this time for some of those areas. By early morning tomorrow, the system, that atmospheric river, we talked about that shifting more on Thursday towards Southern California. So now we're talking about the Los Angeles area, waking up Thursday morning with heavy rainfall, potentially quite heavy at times along the Los Angeles plain. And then by the end of the day, Thursday, moving all the way through Southern California, San Diego, now getting into the lower Colorado River Valley, Thursday evening into parts of southwestern Arizona, parts of Nevada as well, Utah, getting another precipitation and the snowfall here to the point where through the night on Thursday into Friday, we're talking all of parts of Arizona, southern Arizona, snowfall and some of the higher elevations here, clearing out on the backside of that on Friday. Little bit of a break on the weekend. We see some kind of lingering showers in parts of the Central Valley. Not expecting these to be too strong, despite their appearance on this forecast here. Some lingering snow showers across parts of the Sierra Nevadas. Again, nothing too significant, I think, until that next low pressure system associated with that Pacific jet extension and that atmospheric river comes into the picture here, getting into really kind of the day on Sunday. I think sunrise Sunday starts slow for California, but picks up in a big way after that. That potent low pressure system digging in just off the coast of California here now. Heavy rain overspreading the Sacramento Valley. Heavy rain now pushing back into the Bay Area here Sunday p.m., getting through the south central coastline. Very heavy snow at this point up in the Sierra Nevadas. Higher snow levels this time around. Heavy snow getting into the northern Sierras. Now parts of the Cascades getting in on some snow as well. The Willamette Valley getting in on a little bit of precipitation. Not nearly as much as areas further south in California. That system sits through Sunday evening, going into Monday morning now. Still looking at heavy rain across parts of south central coastal California. Monday trying to get more into that Los Angeles area. And then even through Monday evening into Tuesday now, we're looking at San Diego, Los Angeles getting more of the heavy rainfall. We're all the way into Tuesday night here. We still see some snowfall falling in the southern Sierras. And this is potentially a long duration event. It started, right, I said kind of as daybreak Sunday. Now we're at daybreak Tuesday. We're still talking about rainfall and snowfall in the Sierras across California, across parts of Oregon and Washington to a lesser extent. So potentially a more potent system, a longer lasting system, higher winds, higher rainfall, higher snowfall, kind of starting Sunday, lasting anywhere from Sunday to Monday, potentially even into Tuesday. Take the forecast beyond that, it's starting to push into Arizona, now getting into Wednesday, all the way out February 7th, the 7-day forecast with some light lingering showers, snow, and rainfall on the backside of that. If I jump over to the GFS, I'm going to kind of skip the next 48 hours. I want to jump just over to their forecast for that storm number 2, right, Sunday. Looks pretty similar, at least on paper here, going through the day on Sunday, getting into Monday morning. Heavy rainfall falling through parts of the Sacramento Valley, Bay Area at times on late Sunday, focusing more on Los Angeles here, getting into early Monday. Very, very heavy snow signal here for the south central Sierras, both the central Sierras and the southern Sierras here from the GFS. Similar kind of forecast getting into Monday night into Tuesday now, trying to push into the southern areas of California, San Diego, Los Angeles, still seeing the southern Sierras get quite a bit of snowfall here, even on Tuesday morning. So this system from the GFS also lingering daybreak Sunday, potentially all the way through daybreak on Tuesday before pushing out into Arizona, some lingering showers in the Central Valley here Tuesday night, and finally totally exiting the area, let's call it Wednesday night into early Thursday. As you imagine, if we go out and look at the 7-day forecast, precipitation totals from the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center, some areas that kind of stood out in terms of getting multiple rounds of very heavy precip were the Sacramento Valley. They're not going to be as heavy as parts of coastal California because of, they had immediate access to the moisture along the coast and the mountains there. You're talking 2, 3, maybe even getting over 3 inches of rain for some of the areas in the valley here. That is a lot of rain for the Valley of California. Even the San Joaquin Valley, which comparably gets quite a bit less. We typically talk about, some of these events will come through the Sacramento Valley, they'll get an inch. The San Joaquin Valley might get a quarter of an inch. Forecast values, even in some of the lower areas here down by Bakersfield, we're talking well over an inch of rainfall just over the next 7 days. Areas further north toward Fresno looking potentially toward 2 inches of rainfall. Could it exceed that? I think that's certainly a possibility. And as you go up towards Sacramento, values likely over 2 inches here. Jump to the coastline. All right, Central California coastline. Some of these areas, it's always hard to forecast, some of the local flooding impacts, but you could be well in excess of 5, 6, 7 inches, right, in some of these mountainous areas. I'm probably most concerned at this time maybe about the kind of Los Angeles area or areas further to the north of that, some of these coastal mountainous regions, just because of the each system kind of come through kind of focusing on that area. With the atmospheric river pushing through there, this area could see quite a bit of rainfall, even going through San Diego, looking at 3 inches plus of rainfall in an area where we know they're saturated because of some of the flooding here recently. Don't want to exclude, right, Northern California as well, the Mount Shasta area up through Eureka, the northern coastline, high values here, 5, 6, 7 inches plus. Again, some of these kind of local mountainous regions likely are going to exceed that. This is one forecast. Some of them kind of get to the extreme range and you get into much more concerning talking about more of a serious high flood threat. There have been, some runs that have come through. It's a little bit more modest in terms of that flood there. It's hard to be super confident in that right now just because we're at kind of that 5, 6, 7 day period. But it's something, we're going to have to watch going through the weekend here. Want to show quickly, this is the year-to-date precipitation for San Diego, California. I'm kind of hiding behind the legend here. There is that big flood event that we saw earlier last week. That was that 3 inches of rainfall that came through in 24 hours. That already puts us, at 4 inches. We're talking just over 10 inches in San Diego for the year. Very likely, when the recording of the video next week, we're looking at 3 inches plus in San Diego, getting up close to 7, 8. Can't, rule out that we're at 9 inches, year-to-date precipitation for San Diego, which puts us pretty close to our yearly total of rainfall here, just getting into early February. We hit that last year pretty early as well with some of the atmospheric rivers that we saw. So this could be 2 years in a row for Southern California with some potent rainfall moving through very early in the year. Just to get some difference of opinions here, different models on precipitation amounts, not looking at snowfall here, just that raw precipitation. Again, heavy rain, kind of this focus on the kind of Los Angeles area and some of the transverse and coastal mountains just to the north of that. Again, looking at potentially near 4 inches in San Diego, higher amounts along the northern coast of California. Bay Area, potentially in excess of 4 inches as well. Parts of the Sacramento Valley, looking at anywhere from 2, 3, 4 inches, and then even parts of the San Joaquin Valley exceeding potentially, Fresno, 2 inches of rain, pushing further north towards Sacramento, 2 to 3 inches of rain over the next 7 days. Even farther south, through Bakersfield, some areas that we typically don't get much out of some of these systems, looking at 1 inch plus of rainfall. Can't rule out something closer to 2 inches when all is said and done through the next 7 days. As you can imagine, the snowfall conversation is pretty ridiculous for the Sierra Nevadas, with the 48 hours kind of ahead of us, with potentially 1 to 2 feet of snowfall, maybe even beyond that in some areas. That next storm system could be even more potent, especially for the central and southern Sierras. You're talking 2, 3, 4. Are we talking 5 feet of snowfall? I can't rule it out here. Huge numbers, going to get this area a lot closer to average than it was, before the next 7 days. Just to kind of visualize this is looking at the ECMWF ensemble that runs a number of different models with slightly different initial conditions to kind of give us the range of possibilities that we might see over the next 7 days. And if we look at that 7-day probability of looking at all those different model runs of exceeding 4 feet of snowfall for the Sierra Nevadas here, we're talking some areas exceeding 90% probability that you're going to be over 4 feet of snowfall over the next 7 days. I mean, we're talking pretty ridiculous amounts of snowfall. And then some of these areas in the central Sierras, you're still talking 50, 60, or 70% chance of exceeding 4 inches, not 4 inches, right, 4 feet of snowfall here. So the Sierras, winning in a big way if you're talking snowfall, right? But areas below that snow line are under flash flood watches. So it's a concern as well for flooding, given just how much moisture is going to be pushed up along the high elevations of the Sierras here. This is a map we've looked at, I think, every video here in January, looking at the year-to-date snowpack, snow-water equivalent here across the western region. Highlighting this because look at the southern Sierras. We're still below 50% of where we typically are, water year-to-date here in early February, late January. You get into some other areas out west, we're doing a little bit better, particularly the Intermountain West, the upper Colorado River Basin running closer to average. Would like to bump that up even higher, given that, we were just dealing not terribly too long ago with Lake Mead and Lake Powell issues. If you look over into the Cascades, we were doing well there. We had showed some crazy pictures, along Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, very high snowfall amounts. But, it's been a few weeks since we've seen a lot of those consistent strong storms come through, and suddenly we're back below average. We're talking 80 to 88% to 76% of our year-to-date snowpack average. So not a ton of snowfall in the forecast for areas up there. They will get some out of the system, but with it focusing more on California, being a little bit warmer of an event, not expecting, a huge bump up here in some of these areas. The Yakima Valley here, their reservoirs running a bit below average. Now they're running 74% of their snowpack. This year becoming something of a concern. Would like to see more snowfall up in parts of western Montana and Idaho as well, kind of in reference to the Snake River Valley and the water situation there. Although those reservoirs are doing a bit better across the Snake River Valley, running a little bit above average at this time compared to where we were maybe last year or the year before that. Talked about wind potentially being more potent here for California if that's storm number 2. Seeing some strong winds, wind advisories, high wind warnings out. Just here tonight, we're expecting winds to be strong, but potentially looking at another round of strong winds through Sunday into Monday of storm number 2. This is looking at the immediate wind gust forecast from the ECMWF. talking 50 miles an hour plus on the coast. The ECMWF being kind of a poor resolution model, it's not going to necessarily resolve some of those higher wind gusts at times, so we could certainly exceed that along some of the coastal regions and those coastal mountains. Looking potentially kind of that Sacramento Delta wind being an issue as well. I'll take this back in time a little bit to Sunday morning. You'll notice, like I said, probably waking up calm Sunday morning. That's about the end of it. The winds push onshore around lunchtime Sunday, getting stronger into the afternoon and evening through central California, and really lasting potentially all the way into Monday morning with some of those strong winds along the coast, perhaps lesser so in the Sacramento Valley versus what we're seeing here tonight with storm number 1. Winds in Southern California, at least right now from the ECMWF, lesser of a story there. I'm more concerned about flooding in Southern California. You talk about Central California, you have the flooding threat and the wind threat, I think with both these systems more so than Southern California. Talking long range, we talked about the potential, for a cold snap after these Pacific jet extensions. We saw that at the end of December, going into January with some of the frost and the freeze warnings that we had to discuss. Not seeing quite that same level of concern, but if we do look at the ECMWF, the European model forecast low temperatures for next Wednesday night. Now, this is a 7 to 8 day forecast. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. We're seeing potentially freezing temperatures in the Willamette Valley, not terribly uncommon for this time of year, but we are seeing temperatures creep down toward that frost mark here in parts of the Central Valley of California. Don't have a lot of confidence in this forecast, just, we're 7 to 8 days out, but it is something that bears watching kind of at the backside of the system when it comes out, because it tends to bring in colder air as these systems come through. Lower Colorado River Valley, potentially talking, 40s, low 50s in the Imperial area. Keeping an eye on this, just some colder temperatures to keep an eye on Thursday into Friday. If we look at the GFS, they kind of pump the colder temperatures a little bit more toward Friday morning, trying to bring them down below 40 in parts of the Central Valley. Again, this 7 to 8 day temperature forecast, this could change in a big way. We could be looking at temperatures, maybe a little bit milder, 45 degrees Fahrenheit in the Central Valley. Just as easily, they could shift right in the southward direction. You're talking 32, 31 degrees Fahrenheit. We have freeze and frost warnings out for the Central Valley at the end of next week. Not seeing a huge chance of that right now, but it is on my radar, just given the signal between both the ECMWF and the GFS. We have plenty to talk about in the next 7 days. We'll get into more of the kind of seasonal long-range forecast next week when hopefully there's not as many advisories, watches, warnings, and 4 feet of snowfall to talk about. I will mention that if we look at the El Nino index here, valid as of January 31st, we've very, very likely peaked in El Nino. That either occurred, in November or near the end of December, early January. We kind of have these 2 peaks here, depending on which one you want to pick out. We've been weakening El Nino since then. It has not been this huge rapid drop-off. We're still above plus 1 degree Celsius in terms of those anomalies in the Central Tropical Pacific. We're going to expect that weakening to continue as we go toward, April, getting into May. The rate of that weakening, and kind of the atmospheric response, either before or after that, could be relevant for the forecast. We'll keep an eye on this going forward, but El Nino expected to weaken to neutral. That is the ENSO neutral status at some point this summer, and there is some chance, we talked about it last week, that we could shift into a La Nina next year, which would reintroduce some of those La Nina-associated drought concerns. That's why we want to get those snowpacks up this year. That's why we look at those maps, and we're talking about reservoirs and the hydrology and things like that. I talked in the last video how, I think there's some precedence that perhaps we won't go into a La Nina. I wasn't necessarily buying that 60 to 70% chance I was seeing from the Climate Prediction Center, but that possibility is there, so we'll continue to talk about it going through this year. Immediate concerns, there are plenty over the next 7 days, so stay safe, heed the advice of your local authorities and your local National Weather Service advice, or National Weather Service offices there, and stay safe through tonight and tomorrow and this weekend, and I'll talk to you all next week. Thank you.